So one of the new things that gets introduced in factoring in grade 11 is how to factor if you have fractions or if you have decimals. And the basic idea is we're going to multiply to begin with to get rid of those fractions or to get rid of those decimals. So for example, in part A, what would I have to multiply everything by so that I would be left with no more decimals? There's more than one right answer. If you wanted to move the decimal place over 1, what would you multiply by? 10. So that's a good place to start. Now, when you multiply by 10, you change what it's equal to. And if you change what it's equal to, you're going to get a different answer in the end. But a trick in math is to do two things at the same time that cancel each other out. So if I multiply by 10 and divided by 10 at the same time, I'd not do anything. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my expression, which is x squared minus 1.5x plus 0.5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply it by 10, and I'm going to divide by 10 at the same time. And my dividing by 10, I'm going to show as a fraction 1/10. Does everybody agree dividing by 10 is same as multiplying by 1/10? Now, if I distribute this 10 to each thing inside, I would still have my 1/10 out in front. Do that in green. And now I would have 10x squared minus 15x plus 5 on the inside. So now I've changed my inside to have all whole numbers again, and now the inside is factoring just like you had to factor in grade 10. So now on the inside, if I'm looking at that and I'm factoring the inside, the first thing I always check for, is there a common factor? What could I pull out? 5. So I keep my 1/10 here because that would be there, and now I'm going to pull out a 5, and I'd be left with 2x squared minus 3x plus 1. How do you multiply 1/10 times 5? You would get 5 over 10, which is just 0.5 or 1/2, right? I'm going to leave it as a fraction. So 5 over 10 reduces to 1/2. Then this 2x squared minus 3x plus 1, can I factor that? Well, if I could, and I was thinking this is my first term, this is my last one, this will be my outside and my inside combined, this is actually one of the easiest ones to factor that exists. Because what's the only thing that will give you 2x squared when multiplying? It would have to be 2x and x. What's the only way to multiply to get 1? It would have to be 1 and 1. We haven't had to do any thinking so far. So far, everything is just what it has to be. Now we have to decide, are they both going to be positive or are they both going to be negative? Because we need a positive one, right? So these ones will either both be positive or both be negative. Our outside and our inside need to make negative 3. So right now on our outside we've got 2, on our inside we got 1. Can you see if they're both negative? Negative 2x on the outside, negative x on the inside will make negative 3x in total. So the only thing different now is that we have a half out in front. So we got rid of the decimal by multiplying by 10, and then we divided by 10 at the same time, so that this is actually multiplying by 1, which just changes what it looks like, but not changes what it's equal to. And then from there we factored it. Can anybody see in this first one that you could have gotten rid of the decimal by multiplying everything by 2? Okay? If you multiplied everything by 2, you'd have to divide by 2, and you would have gotten to this 1/2 in front right away. So both would have worked. One's not necessarily better than the other. Our second one has a fraction. So now factoring with a fraction becomes difficult. So what we do is we get rid of the fraction. And a fraction is like dividing. So what would I have to multiply to get rid of the fraction here? I have to multiply by 3. So at the same time, I'm going to divide by 3. So now if I multiply by 3 and divide by 3, or multiply by 1/3 and multiply by 3, now if I distribute this 3, still have the 1/3 outside, and I'd have 3x squared. What's going to happen when the 3 multiplies by the negative 17 over 3? Well, those 3's will cancel out, and you'll just be left with negative 17x, and the 3 times the negative 2 will be negative 6. Now again, if this is our first, and this is our last, and this is our outside and our inside combined when we're factoring this one's not hard to factor because the 3x squared tells us that our first ones have to be 3x and x. Now we have some choices. How can you get 6? What multiplies to give you 6? 2 and 3. So we tried 2 and 3. What's my outside right now? 9. Inside is 2. Do 9 and 2 ever make 17? No. 1 and 6. So if we tried 1 and 6, we would have 1 here and 6 here. My outside would be 18. My inside would be 1. Do 18 and 1 ever add or subtract to make 17? Yes. Now we need it to be negative 17. So I'm going to make my 6 negative. So my outside is negative 18. My inside is positive 1. Negative 18 plus 1 would be negative 17. That works. I'm going to just do a quick check. Is my last term still negative 6? Yes. My first term still 3x squared? Yes. And so now we've factored this completely. Questions like this, where you have fractions or decimals for practice? 9, 10, 11, and 18. Okay, so we will take some time now to practice both those first two examples.